Hi guys, the purpose of this demonstration video is to find out how to mix colors and to become familiar with how colors behave when you mix them so that you are able to accomplish what you want to in a painting that you're working on. All right, so our equipment for this session is your acrylic paints, of course the other painting equipment, your water container filled with clean water, your palette, an old plate, steel, plastic, paper. You need your paint brushes and pick out this one that you used before. It's about maybe 1/4 of an inch, a flat one. And then of course your surface here. This is a sheet of canvas. You might have a canvas board, or you might just have paper if you're working directly in your arts process journals, as some classes are. All right, so what I have done here, of course, then you'll also need a pencil and a scale, a ruler. And I have marked off a rectangle. It is 6 inches by 9 inches. So the goal is to make squares of 1.5 inch in height and width. And so I've marked these, put these marks here along every 1.5 inches, right? So this will give me 6 rows and 4 columns. So you can go ahead if you need to and pause the video and just draw out your grid here with pencil. 6 by 4 grid, but each of these squares is 1.5 inches in height and width. And if you want the total size of your rectangle is 6 inches by 9 inches. Okay, so I'll put aside my pencil and ruler, and here is where we start. We've got our acrylic paints and we have a whole range of them, but we want to pick out just the primary colors and black and white. So let me grab black and white and then the primary colors. So pick out the yellow, and either if you've got several yellows, if you have an option, pick out cadmium yellow. Okay, here I only have one option. It's lemon yellow. So it's not ideal. Cadmium yellow is ideal, but this will do. So this is my yellow. And then I need my reds, and very often reds will come in two, there's typically 2 combinations of reds here, because reds they either come in a kind of a warmer or a cooler. So this here is called Scarlet Lake, but it can also be called cadmium red. And this is the warmer. This is kind of red that tends to be closer to yellow. It has a little bit of extra yellow in it. This is a cooler red, and this one is called Crimson Lake, or also ideally it would be called Scarlet Crimson. But Crimson Lake here would be fine if that's the only one you have. And this red tends to be cooler because it has a little bit more of the blue in it. Remember, our 3 primary colors are yellow, red, blue, right? So this connects a little bit closer to the yellow. This connects a little bit closer to the blue, right? This makes it warmer and this makes this cooler. So you want both of these. And then we go to the blues. And again, blues will often come in various hues. Here we have a cobalt blue hue and a Prussian blue. We just really want one blue. If you have ultramarine blue, that is ideal. That's kind of the main one we want. If we don't have that, then between these two, I would go for the cobalt blue hue. Okay, so we'll take that out, put the rest of the paints aside. We don't want to cheat. We don't want to use any of these oranges or greens, because we're going to make our own orange and make our own green and make our own violet, which isn't even in this set here. All right, so to begin with, let's start with, let's go back to our grid. And I'm going to mark off, let me grab my pencil back again. And just to give you a sense of where we're going with this, right? These are going to be our hues. Let me write down hue here. What does hue mean? Hue means it's essentially it's the term for color, the pure color. Okay, so we're going to have red here. Sorry, not red. Silly me. Yellow. We're going to start off with yellow. Then we're going to go from yellow to orange, from orange to red, And then we're going to have violet here, or you can say purple, but technically the term is violet, and a blue here, and down to green. Okay, this is the sequence of our hues that we're going to mix up or get straight out of the tubes. What are these columns? These columns are kind of giving us the experience of getting our yellow either lighter in value or darker in value, right? And so the first column is going to be our attempt to get it lighter in value, and when we do that, it's called a tint. Okay, this is a hue. Sorry, that's not very clear. And this is a tint. A tint means it's the lighter version of the pure color. Okay. After that, we're going to work on the next column, which is we're going to try to get the color darker in value. Okay, so, and a darker version of the color is called a shade. That's kind of where the word shading comes from when we do sketching or or the word shadow. All right, so we're going to make two kinds of shades though, and one of the goals of this exercise is going to learn a little bit about color. So because the first column, the first version of shading we're going to use to create the shade, we're just going to use pure black as a way to darken each of these colors. So this is going to be the black shade. But the last column here is going to be our shading that we're going to achieve using the complementary color. So I'm going to just shorten that to compl for complementary. And this is, to me, this is one of the tricks of painting. And we'll see what I mean by that. Is we're going to compare how these two look in the end. But typically, the best kind of, the most beautiful paintings, we end up when you use the complementary to create to darken it, not the black. And because black takes away color. So anyway, we're going to still make a black column here to shade, just to be able to compare. All right, so let us begin. Let's start with a pea size worth of yellow there, okay? And we're going to just get that yellow straight onto the canvas. So go ahead and paint just right over this first square here. I'm just painting over the word I wrote there. That was okay. And the key here, of course, is to get not so much make it really clean and pretty, but just to get a good layer of paint over that. And you can almost kind of see that my writing kind of peeking through, if you may or may not. But so I want to get enough paint over that so I don't see the graphite underneath. And you notice that I'm holding my paintbrush really flat, because that is the best way to actually layer the paint on. If I try to do it like this, it's just going to push the paint up and down and cause it to look really scratchy. But by holding it flat, you're able to actually keep that paint right on the top of the surface there. All right, so I got my yellow, and let me take some of the excess paint off here and clean my brush. You probably remember this process from the blending of the black and white blending demonstration video. Okay, now I'm going to create my tint, right? So let me take the white out and let me put a good amount over here. So I've got kind of like about 2 or 3 little, the size of a green pea that you cook with, right? So that's got about that amount. And I'm going to, I probably need a little bit more back here. Okay, I'm going to pick up a little bit of that, okay, about maybe 1/4 the size of a pea there, and I want to mix it in with this paint here. In fact, I'm going to add maybe even more than that. I want to get this quite light. So let's say equal amounts. So we've got the equal amount of white to the yellow. Okay, And that gives me a really a lighter version of the yellow. And I'm going to go ahead and just put that in there. Now, because this is a lemon yellow hue, it's already pretty light. If you have cadmium yellow, it'll give you your hue will be much darker and kind of a little bit more orangey actually. But see, there may not be a huge difference between these two, although once you put it down, you'll see the difference. It might be harder to see in the video, but because our lemon we started off with was pretty light, but that's good enough. There. All right. So I've got my tint, which is the lighter. It's lighter in value to the pure hue, the pure color, and I'm going to now go in with my shade. Okay. And again, I'm going to take this, and I think each of these squares, I think you can get about just a little bit less than that. The size of a pea, and it will be about the right amount for that square. Okay, now let me put down some of this black onto my palette. And black you have to be really careful with. So you don't want to pick up a lot. You're going to pick up just a tiny bit. In fact, so I'm just picking up really literally just it's just a tiny layer on my brush. It's not even. And okay, and let me start mixing that in there, and you can see that it turns dark in value really fast with just even a little bit of black. Okay, so I'll grab that and let me go ahead and fill this in. Okay, my square that is the shade of the yellow, but using black to create the shade. Using black to darken it. Okay, so I've got my first shade. Now the second shade is going to be, as we mentioned, with the complementary color. So what is the complementary color of yellow? It is violet, or some people might say purple, but it's called violet. So yes, now I don't have violet, right? Because I'm just working with my primary colors. So I have to first mix up my violet. So in order to do that, I'm going to go from the yellow row here, and I'm going to jump down to the violet row. Okay, and I'm going to start off with mixing up that violet. And to mix up the violet, I want to get my blue here. This one is my cobalt blue. If you have ultramarine, that's ideal. And I'm going to actually take that's one piece worth in size, and I'm going to add another piece worth in size because I'm going to use this mixture. I want to get through the entire row. So I'm going to mix 4 different cover 4 different squares with the paint here. So that's why I want extra there, and even add a little bit up here. And then I will go and take a little bit of the alizarin crimson or the crimson lake. Okay, this is the cooler version of the red. Okay, not the cadmium or not the scarlet lake. All right, so let me mix about let me see. It's almost about the same amount, but less. And let's see what happens. Okay, so we get that and mix that up. So that's giving me a nice violet there. Now the thing is, we're going to actually do something. We're going to take our violet, and what happens with acrylics is it's different from oil colors or watercolors, is that when acrylics dry, they always dry a little bit darker. So when it's wet, it looks really like a nice violet. But once that dries, it's going to almost turn like a dark black almost, because of the fact that it always dries a little bit darker. So I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white there and mix that in, just so that it stays tiny bit here. It stays lighter when it dries. All right, so I have my violet, and I've already got it on my brush. So I'm going to, before I jump up to here, I'm going to put down this layer over the word violet here, or purple, and cover that nicely. Again, not worrying too much about neatness, but more worrying about getting enough paint on that canvas or paper so that it doesn't, you don't get these little flecks of white shining through. All right, I've got that down. Now let me go and clean my brush so that we can go back in to our yellow and create our shade with the complementary of the yellow, meaning the violet here. All right, I will take a little bit of the original hue and I'm going to place it next to the black shade, the shade I created with black, and pick up a little bit of this violet here and mix that in. And I kind of want to try to get the value to be the same here. So you might want to squint your eyes to see, I'm squinting my eyes, I'm seeing this is lighter than that. So let me pick up a little bit more of the violet. Right. Okay, I've got some, I think I've got a good, the value is about the same as the value of that. And I'm going to pick that up and put that on. And as you're seeing, you might be able to see here, if I don't put enough paint, it kind of looks sort of scratchy, or there's I can see the white underneath. So I want to, again, keep my paint really flat and layer that paint over the top there. So this comes because whereas the black is more opaque, when I mix the black in, it's kind of thicker. But when I mix using this, the purple here, the violet, it's more translucent. So different colors have different amounts of opaqueness or translucency. So if it's more translucent, you actually have to put extra paint on top to keep the light colored surface underneath from shining through. All right, I have my shade using my complementary. And now, let me go back and finish up the purple here. So I've got my original, my mixture here of the purple, and I'm going to create the tint, which is adding a little bit of white. So let me pick up some of this and kind of move it to the side. Again, about a pea size worth of that, because I don't want to, I'm going to use the rest of that for the other parts. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of white, and I'm going to try to pick up the same amount of white I picked up for that, so that the changes are consistent. I think I had actually picked up some more, if I'm forgetting how much. I think it was about, again, almost a pea size worth, or a little bit less, I think, if I remember correctly. All right. So let me grab this, and put this down. And you can probably get the idea. There's a certain rhythm to this, and it takes time. But what I wanted you to get out of this video is the sequence, because the same sequence will be followed with the other columns. Okay, I've got that. I've got my tint down, and let's work on the shade. And this is pretty easy here. We've got, again, I'm going to pick up about a pea size worth of paint there, a little bit less, and then grab a tiny amount. Remember, this is about the same amount you grabbed for the yellow of the black. I'm going to just bring that in, and we have a darker version of our black, in fact, it can almost end up getting close to looking like it's actually just black itself, because the violet is already so dark in value. Okay. Just making sure I've got enough paint on the canvas. All right, and now for the final step, the complementary. Now, of course, this might seem a little bit strange because we're trying to create a shade, which is a darker version, but we're going to be doing that with the complementary, which is which is yellow in this case, and it will actually probably take us to a lighter version of the purple, but that is okay. What's going to happen is the hue of the purple is going to change. Right? It's going to become less intense. It's turns actually more gray. Right? But the difference is that it may not turn darker, but it turns more gray. And so that is one of the other things with painting, is that you at different times you want to, if everything is super intense, right? When it comes straight out of the tube, you have the term is saturation or intensity. When the highest intensity or the highest saturation is when it's a pure hue. It's come straight out of the tube. But you don't want always to have everything super, super intense. You want to tone things down. And that's where you use your complementary is one of the best ways to tone down your intensity. All right, so I've got my complementary there. Now, what is next? We go back up to the second row, and we want to mix up an orange. Okay, an orange is going to be picking up you need your yellow. So let me put, again, we've got 1 pea size worth. Let me put 2 pea size worths, because we're going to, once we mix up our orange, we want to spread it. We have to have enough to cover 4 different squares. And with that, we also want some of the, we want cadmium red. Yes, the warm, or Scarlet Lake. No, sorry. Yes, Scarlet Lake in this case, which is the warmer version of the red. And here I'm going to actually mix up the same amount, or add, the same amount of red, and create a nice mixture of that to get me my orange. All right, so there we have my orange. And I'll go ahead and fill out this first orange. This is the pure hue. Again, not caring about the neatness as much as covering everything. All right. And once I've got that, let me just go ahead. In fact, I don't have to wash it on my brush. I'm just going to pick up somewhat, like again, the size of a pea to the side, and pick up, remember we said about 3/4 the size of a pea there, and create my tint with the white. Okay. So I've got my tint there, and let me fill that tint in over here. You can probably see that you're starting to see there's a consistency in the change of value. So going from yellow to the tint, and from orange to the tint, and from purple to the tint, they're starting to look similar. Over here, they're starting to look. Let me clean my brush here. Okay, having mix my tint. Now I'm going to go in and create my shade, but the first one is using black to create the shade. So let me again pick up some of this orange and put it to the side here, and then lift up just a little bit of that black. Remember, about the same amount that I picked up from the others, and got my darker here. Let me go ahead and fill that. lift off all the paint I can. All right, so once I've got that black, then let me now for sure wash my brush because I want that clean, because I'm going to now create the other shade using the complementary, right? So once my brush is clean, this complementary of orange is blue, of course, and thus I'm going to get my blue out. So let me take the cobalt blue hue, or if you have ultramarine, then what you want to do is pick out you want to put your ultramarine blue down and then take a little bit of white to mix in with that ultramarine, because when it's straight out of the tube, it's a little bit too dark for the color wheel, or for creating the right colors here. But if it's cobalt blue, just use cobalt blue as it is. Cobalt blue is pretty bright. So here, let me, you know what, I grabbed a whole bunch on my brush here. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it down here. I should have just taken a bit and to add to the orange, but let's not waste this. Okay. So I've got the blue down there. Let me clean my brush again. Sorry, I was meant to work with the orange and then just add a little bit of blue. So I've got my dry brush and I've got the original orange here. I'm going to pick up just like a little bit of blue there, maybe about the same amount as the black, and let's see what happens. I'm going to mix it into this area here. This amount here. Yeah. Okay, and let me put this down. Great. So once that's down, let's go back to the blue and continue working with the blue, because the reason why we're working straight with the blue is that before the orange dries, we want to be able to fix this, finish this one at the end here. We could go with the red, but by the time we come back down to blue here, that orange may have dried already. So that's kind of this is the pattern. You start up there, come down to the purple, go up to the orange, work on the blue, and then go to the red and then the green. Okay, that's the key here. So with my blue, let's first pick up the white to create our tint, and let's do this like a similar. Oh, sorry, I'm off of the camera there. So try to mix in the same amount that we mixed earlier in. So that was that with the yellow. He was with the orange, and now with the blue. And put this down. Once you've got your tint finished, you can go ahead and clean your brush to work on the black shade. And your black, so I'm going to pick up again about a little bit less than a pea size worth there, because that's about the amount we need to fill in one of those squares. And then, like we did earlier, just a tiny bit of the black. And we've mixed up that shade of blue, and let's so the blue looks quite translucent, which means I probably have to now add more paint. So I'm going to go back and pick up some of that original blue again and mix up the same amount, or mix it to the same value, so that I've got enough paint to have a good layer. Otherwise, what happens is the white of the canvas shows through, and it changes the value. So even though your paint is a darker value, though if it's not thick enough, the white underneath changes the value and makes it lighter than you want it to be. That's the whole purpose of getting the layer, a nice thick layer down, so that the white underneath doesn't change the value that you're aiming for. There you go. So that is the blue mixed with the shade of blue using black. And finally, we're going to do the same thing that we did with the purple, where we've got our blue and we're going to add the complementary, which is orange, which again doesn't seem to make sense because orange is a lighter value. So it doesn't actually turn it darker, but what it does is it takes out, it makes it grayer, right? It takes out the, I'm going to add a little bit more. It takes out the saturation, right? The intensity. Do you see that? This blue is so intense, and what I've mixed out here is kind of a grayer version of that blue. And this is the secret to complementary colors, is that when you mix them in, they create these beautiful grays. We need some more paint. Again, the problem with blue, this particular cobalt blue hue, is that it's very translucent. It's kind of, so I didn't realize how translucent it was, which means we have to mix up an extra amount of blue here, so that we can cover the square without the white shining through. But the beautiful thing, the secret about using complementaries is that one is that it cuts down the intensity, and there's different reasons why you want to cut down the intensity in a painting. Typically, to make things look far away. When things are far away, the color is not intense. If things are closer to you, they're more intense. So you use so that's one reason why you want to cut down the intensity. But even besides that, by using the complementary color creates out of the blues, you get these beautiful grays. All right. Now we would jump to the red, and this is our almost getting to the end here. We want a mixture of the light, the warm, and the cool red. So half